Happy Monday. So hope everybody's had a good weekend and your week's starting well. So there are a few announcements, and I kept adding to this as I was getting the agenda prepared. So this grew on me a good bit, and I'll pause if there's questions at the end of it. Uh, Sikat's out, so we know who's got out today, who's out this week. So it's only Sikat this week, and he's out today. Should be back tomorrow. 13.9 is officially underway. So with since January 22nd is in our review window, that means what we have prioritized in that planning issue is what we're working towards. Just I'm pretty sure everybody was aware of it, but just worth calling out. The UX department, and I pulled a few things from the engineering weekend review. So apologies if you've already seen this, but I noted that the UX department did an async review of the MR experience. SAST findings came up as something that was discovered. And so it's just worth noting that I thought y'all might be interested in seeing what others are the work that is done to review what happens to within an MR. And so I thought that was worth calling out. And I think I linked to the UX retro. No, I linked straight to the item that was open. Next item is from Geo. This was noted in Slack. This was also noted in Engineering Weekend Review, and is also worth calling out in case you used staging.gitlab.com. Geo is going to do an experiment a week from today on maintenance mode, which makes it read-only for a period of time. Link to the epic and the work involved with that is available there. And so assuming that this is going to be a new feature that will eventually come to production as well. So this is a state to be aware of, and how it might impact us is worth following. And last but certainly not least, a few weeks ago when we all came back from the New Year and end of year festive break, we noted that we wanted to continue happy hours. And we were interested in having them monthly. It is now on the Secure Stage calendar, with the first one starting next week, February 3rd, I believe is that Wednesday. It's Wednesday evenings, continuing on with that. So those are available for those are the announcement items. Any questions on those before continuing on?
Yeah. For the happy hour, do you think we'll keep it to a half hour?
I'm happy to make them an hour. I'm happy to make them as long as we want it to be.
Yeah, I'd be happy to make it an hour too. I was just curious, I think with that in particular, communicating with the family, I think helps setting. So yeah, just saying, like, if I'm going to say a half hour, I'll probably be like, this is fun. I'd love to continue, but okay. So just making sure I understand the expectations on that. I'm happy one way or the other. So
I'll schedule it for an hour. Wednesdays are my work night. Everybody can come as you are, come when you can, come off as you can. We'll be here. We'll do some games, we'll do some chalking, we can rotate who's hosting if y'all want to do this. I was entertaining the idea in earlier conversation today. I mean, we can rotate into actually some conversations on some serious non-work related things if y'all are interested. Because I mean, let's face it, it has not been a quiet time in U.S. current events. And so if we wanted to get into some of that, we could, and try to solve world peace over beer, which is always entertaining. I'm happy to, open forum, and we'll figure out more what we're doing when we get closer to time, if y'all are interested. Okay. Any others? All right, let's get into the retro. So this is something I neglected to do last time, but since we're continuing to do these at the group level as opposed to the sub-department or stage level, with me, it's always important. It's always found it important to kind of set the tone in what we're trying to do with retros. And that involves talking about the retro prime directive, which states, regardless of what we discover, we understand and truly believe that everyone did the best job they could, given what they knew at the time, their skills and abilities, the resources available, and the situation at hand. At the end of a project or a release, everyone knows so much more. Naturally, we will discover decisions and actions we wish we could do over. This is wisdom to be celebrated, not judgment used to embarrass. And that is from Norm Kurth on Project Retrospectives. So if you want a link to that, let me know. I'm happy to provide it. And you will be reading for a while. This is me pulling out just a nugget from a very long post. So with that being said, I will share my screen because we had some commentary come in today. And we had enough, or we have a few, we don't have so much commentary that I think we can talk about everything that's here. So I was going to go in chronological order, unless someone would like to object. Okay. Daniel, you're up.
Yeah, so one thing that I think didn't go so well this last iteration was just that there was a new feature with regards to MRs now where you can assign reviewers. And I saw that composition analysis, they had discussion, and then it was bubbled up to, the secure stage. But I don't know that we actually fully decided where we were going or how we were going to use or not use the feature. And so it's kind of been all over the place. And I think some of my requests for reviews kind of slipped through the cracks until I like, oh, I better use the older process. So all that being said, I think it'd just be great to have a quick discussion and then, probably document it on our team page of how we're approaching the request for reviews. What do y'all think?
I think there was a global issue about this, and it would make sense to sort of try and align with the company-wide strategy here. And I think I'll try and dig out the issue that I'm thinking of, but I think the summary was, let's continue using the assignees feature as we always have, and kind of just ignore the reviewers feature, or use it if you want, but it's just an addition rather than a replacement of the assignees feature.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm happy to do that. I think that makes a lot of sense. It'd be good to. Oh, thank you. I see, Lucas. You just added the link. Thank you. It's kind of interesting that we added a feature that we're not wanting the dog food. It seems a little surprising. I'll read into that though. Oh yeah.
I think that's pretty universal though. We have things like requirements, which I personally think is a very silly feature, but other people find utility in it. So I don't think we're ever going to reach a point where we can use every feature on the platform.
That makes perfect sense.
I definitely think reviewers is a bit confusing as well, because there's been confusion about whether or not that means these are people who should whether it's a request to review or whether it's a record of who has reviewed an MR as like more of an audit trail. And so I know that there is like multiple interpretations of what reviewers would mean that people have been struggling with as well.
There's in that issue somewhere, there's a description of how people see the design of the reviewers feature going forward, and there's a bit of overlap between the approvals MR widget and the reviewers widget, and the idea is to merge them at some point so you can see who's reviewed, who hasn't approved, and who has, and to use it more as an audit trail, which I think is pretty neat. But yeah.
Awesome.
There's quite a lot of discussion in this, and I'm going to take the time to read this asynchronously, hopefully later today. As a brainstorm, and I'd be willing to put this in an MR, would it be worth approaching approvers versus reviewers, where if you put someone in the approvers field, you're requesting them to review and merge, whereas a reviewer is an FYI? Like if you have somebody that would be impacted by your work, but they're working in a related but not same area, you want to let them know the changes coming through, it's an FYI. Would that be a way to approach it?
Could be. We'd want to document that on our team page, right?
Yeah.
I think the only issue I see with that is that we already see how many different ways team members like to receive notifications, right? Either they're following their emails, or they say only mention me in all replies to everything, or, and there's all these different ways to communicate and notify people. And it's kind of a similar thing in that, it's multiple ways to notify someone of like, hey, come look at this. And if they're hyper focused on one approach because they've got a lot on their plate, they might still miss it. So that would be my only concern. I don't know if it's valid or if it's just speculative though.
I'm not sure how much control that we have enough control over how approvers works to make using it how I think you're suggesting using it, Thomas, to like make that work.
So to Mark's point earlier, do we have a compelling reason to deviate from the way that the rest of the company would use reviewers? Like ideally, anytime that we're doing a different method than as documented by the majority of development, there's a really good reason for it.
I'm not sure I've parsed your question quite right, but my feeling is that we should aim to do exactly what the consensus is with the rest of the company, because as soon as you send a review to another team, you're going to have friction if you don't have the same expectations. Does that answer your question, Lucas?
I was more advocating for that. My question was more to Thomas on, since Thomas suggested a way we could use it. I'm more wondering if we have a compelling reason to use it in a different way than the rest of the company.
I was brainstorming to use it. I wasn't brainstorming as a suggestion to supersede how the rest of the company was using it. I'm writing this up as a comment, the retro issue now, and I want to find in the handbook how we say we're using it as a company. And I think it's worth calling out explicitly within the static analysis section of the handbook, saying for reviews, here's how we do it. And it just pointing to the global, to global GitLab.
Yeah, I really like that idea. And especially with the fact that once we have that on our page, then, it's pretty clear when it's changing, as opposed to even if new features or new ways assignees and reviewers happen in the future, anything that would affect our review, we can just, know that handbook first. So, if it hasn't changed on our page, let's continue with that process. And then, if we want to use a new feature or a new way, then we would open an MR. So I like that.
The way that I'm seeing it, the way that I'm trying to act, is that unless we explicitly override it in our portion of the handbook, we are following the way the company is saying we should do it. So if we're looking for guidance, I see this as an override, but it should not be the default. We should not be default different from the rest of the company at all. If it works for us, we should be. And I think we have some differences that do work for us. But this is not, I don't see anything compelling yet. Okay. All right, interest of time, let's keep moving forward. Ross, you want to talk about mob programming for a minute?
Yeah, Sakat, Mark, and Yannick and I did some mob programming the past couple weeks, a couple different times, and I certainly enjoyed it. It's nice to not just work alone sometimes, and it was, learn new stuff. Definitely not advocating doing it all the time, but when opportunities are appropriate, it was good.
Very cool. I'm glad we found something that works, and we're not saying that needs to be the only way we work, but it's really cool we found a way that we can work collaboratively. It's cool. Lucas, you've got the next couple.
Yeah, so changing default branches had some surprises. That was just setting the default branch to main instead of master for the modules that we broke out for our analyzers. Just a couple surprises, like our danger file looked for branch master instead of using the CI default branch environment variable. So abstraction is useful and good reminder to do that when we can. Yeah, and just nice to get those unexpected changes because it helps us realize that things are different. So this is more of a plus, thumbs up slash ways we can improve, but yeah, positive. Any comments on that one or jumping to the next?
Are you working through an issue to update all our default branches to be main instead of master?
No, this is purely because these are like brand new projects, so it's a really easy
Oh,
change to make.
I got you. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, this is pretty off the books. It was just mostly a quick test to see what would break with minimal consequences, since no projects are actually using these modules yet either. All of our analyzers need to be updated to use the individual modules.
Do we need to document some, for lack of a better term, best practices? Like not hard coding branch names. Don't assume that the default branch is master would certainly be a best practice. Do we need to do an effort around like building up some of these best practices to help us move forward?
I think that's tricky. That's kind of like a, I don't want to say it's like obvious, but it's one of those things where it's something that we just need to pay attention to reviews to not hard code things in general. It gets to the point where I wonder how much of our docs have things like use descriptive variables and other kind of general programming best practices. We could do that in style guide, but I'm not really sure where the boundaries are of documenting everything is. I'm sure if other people disagree with that, I'm happy to hear opinions.
It makes me wonder if this hard coding was possibly introduced even before CI default branch. I don't know how old that MVAR is, but definitely the switch from master being the default, that's got over a decade of solidity to it, where it's changed this last year. So probably unforeseen in some regards, felt safe, and possibly done before the CI VAR was created. So I don't know if this is necessarily, Lucas, would you agree with the statement that this wasn't necessarily bad practice when it might have been created, but could be going forward, like, hey, you have a variable now, let's use the variable?
Yeah, I mean, I think the variable is older than our danger bot integration is, but yeah, I don't think it's necessarily bad practice. It's something that hasn't changed. I don't know how old Git is off the top of my head, but it hasn't changed in a very long time. So I wouldn't say that this is, I'm going to change this to a thumbs up because this is just something that's been educational. I don't think this is something that we strictly need to improve on because,
No.
yeah.
Well, yeah, and I would agree with the sentiment that the first time something happens, taking outcomes of that to a style guide is certainly an overreaction. And I would argue that it's still an overreaction the second and third times that it occurs. But if it occurs beyond that, then it becomes a signal that we should document it in some source of truthiness location. Colbert reference intentional. Agreed. No, I've got an internal ticker going on in my head that we've talked about this once, and so now we're aware of it. That's something to.
Yeah, I think it's a good question.
Yeah.
Just for now, no action is needed.
Okay.
Cool. So the next one, CI templates test coverage or lack thereof. We have linting to make sure that our YAML files are YAML, but that's more or less it. So editing our CI templates is pretty high risk. It's annoying. A lot of that requires our analyzers to depend on the the default branch, configuration. So that means that we have to merge things, run downstreams, and see if they blow up. And that is far from ideal. There isn't a very easy way to fix this currently, but we definitely should look at how to make this better. Part of the good news there is that it's impactful to us, but not our customers. So that's nice. When we break things, it only blocks us.
Unless we've got like a P1 security breach that we're trying to fix urgently, and then we're in a separate world of hurt. But yeah, noted. I'm not trying to pass the buck, but I'm honestly struggling with how to respond as far as what's the improvement. So knowing that we have software engineers in test and a quality department that I'm seeking their input. And this is something that doesn't just impact us, and we're not just impacted by us, we're impacted by anyone who uses and modifies these templates. Okay. Any other thoughts on this one? Sorry, I didn't mean to hijack the conversation. It's just. All right, one more, Ross, that's from you.
Yeah, GitLab continues to be a supportive place to work. I spent a lot of time wordsmithing this, so we can just read it on our own. I think it stands alone for what I want to say anyways.
I'll echo this, and this is a very much a US-centric backend team, and it's hard to ignore everything that has happened over the past few months. So it's and not that the world doesn't revolve around the US. We'll just put it that way. However, that's what most of this team is most aware of. All right. Is there anything else from any other retro commentary folks would like to bring up live while we're on the call? Okay, close it out. All right, thank you all for doing that. Thank you for being a part of it. This is something that we will do as documented in our handbook. We're going to do this as our weekly for the very first Tuesday after the 22nd. So that way you can just count on it. It'll be at this time, and I'll keep and. I think 13.9 retro issue is open, and I'll make sure that it's linked in for multiple places. And so thank you all for doing this. Thank you for being a part of it. And we'll get this, we'll figure out how we respond to this, make sure that we're doing the best we can, and making sure that we're slow but steadily and deliberately trying to improve. That way we're not doing change for change's sake, but things that are deliberate responses that can make this progressively better. So thank you. That's it from the written agenda. Is there anything else folks would like to talk about while we're here? All right. Well, thanks everybody for your time and attention. I appreciate it. I'm going to stop the recording. Taylor, if I could borrow you for about 5 minutes for a conversation, I'd appreciate it. And if anybody else wants to stick around here, you're welcome to do so. So thank you. We'll see you soon.